Loads of golfers are looking to break that 80 barrier and shoot in the 70s for the first time. And I actually think it's a lot easier to do than most golfers think. Today I'm going to be breaking down the stats and showing you 5 easy tips to help you break 80 next time you go out on the golf course. Now, the first mistake I see people making out on the golf course that's affecting their scoring is picking 3-wood when they probably still should be hitting driver. Now, it seems like a sensible decision if you're on a hole that looks a bit tight, you're not quite sure where the ball's going to go, to drop down to a shorter club, something that maybe you think is going to be easier to hit the fairway. But did you know we actually only hit 1% more fairways when we choose to hit 3-wood? This means we're not really improving our chance of hitting the fairway, and also we're still leaving ourselves miles further into the green. So actually most of the time the most optimal strategy would be to stick to your driver and get yourself further down the hole. We know from looking at scoring stats that being nearer the hole is giving you the best chance of shooting a lower score. So actually pulling out driver makes much more sense than dropping down to 3-wood. Now obviously this stat could be slightly skewed in the sense that if people are dropping down to 3-wood, maybe it's because it is a tighter hole, so it looks like they're hitting less fairways just purely because the hole is shorter and harder. But also if we look at the dispersion between the two clubs, driver to 3-wood, you're really not bringing it in much smaller. So actually I think if you're on a hole which is really tight and really narrow and you feel like you really can't hit driver, actually the better strategy would be drop down to something much shorter, say a 4 or a 5 iron. We know if you drop down to 4 iron you gain about 10% in terms of accuracy. So actually if accuracy is what you're looking for, you're actually better dropping much further down the bag and going for a long iron rather than a 3-wood. Overall, I think it's really worth you knowing what your miss is with driver. If you know your miss is 50 yards wide, you can work out the width of the fairways at your home golf course quite easily using Google Maps or Pro Visualizer. Then you know what club you should be using based on if you can hit that fairway or not with your worst shot. And then from there you can decide if you should be moving down your bag or not. So my big recommendation here would be go to the range, hit loads of shots with each club in your bag, work out how wide your miss is, and then bring that back to the golf course and see which misses can fit on different holes, and use the longest club possible wherever you feel comfortable. That's going to help you score in the most. Only drop down when absolutely necessary, but if you want to drop down, really do drop down and play a shorter, more accurate club. I mean, that one definitely went the straightest. I told you should just hit driver. While you're here, I would really appreciate if you could hit that subscribe button. This is a brand new channel that I'm trying to grow, and having more subscribers gives me the best opportunities to get great content opportunities to bring great videos back to you. So if you could hit that subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it. And while you're there, you might as well like this video and drop me a comment about what else you'd like to see on the channel. Right, back to it. I think a massive thing people need to realise when it comes to breaking 80 or trying to play scratch golf is that par is a really good score. I think a lot of times we can get confused and think that scratch golfers are going out there and making loads of birdies, and that's the difference between their score and a higher score. But actually this isn't the case at all. On average, scratch golfers are making just over 2 birdies a round. So if you want to shoot lower scores, you should actually be focusing on making more pars out on the golf course and not worrying about the birdies. If we compare a scratch golfer to a 15 handicapper, a scratch golfer actually only makes 2 extra birdies a round, but they have 7 extra pars. So it's in that area they're making up their shot difference. They're also better at avoiding big scores. They make 4 less bogeys on average, and they also make 4 less doubles. Making 4 less doubles is saving 8 shots a round. So really, if I want you to take one thing from this, scoring is about removing your bad shots, not about hitting more good shots. Now, a massive thing that can help us make more pars is by being less aggressive. All the time I see club golfers firing at pins when they're out on the golf course, and this really isn't the best strategy if we want to get the ball on the green consistently and give ourselves 2 putts for par. I'm on the 15th hole here at Woodley, and this is a perfect example of a situation where the green looks quite big, it looks quite friendly, but actually there's loads of intricacies, and if we hit the ball near that pin, it's going to be really hard to finish it there. So there's actually a massive false front here that rolls everything back off the green and down to the right towards a big bunker. There's obviously that massive bunker short left, and it also runs off at the back of the green. So although this looks like a massive putting surface, there's only a small percentage of it that we should actually be trying to hit our golf ball on. This is going to completely change what club I pick on this hole and also where I move my target to. So for me here, I know that back right pin is a nightmare. It's just trying to lure me in to hit it close, but that bunker and that false front are just there ready to grab my golf ball and force me into a bogey, a double or worse. So actually when I'm playing into this green, I'm always aiming 10 to 15 yards left of any pin that's on the right hand side of the putting surface. What this means is I kind of am playing aggressively. I'm playing aggressively to a completely new target, not to the original pin. And this is what Tiger was incredible at the peak of his career. He'll talk about being really aggressive, but being aggressive to his spot. Now for basically all amateur golfers, your spot should be the fattest part of the green, which is easiest to hit and has the most room, because we're just not as accurate as we think we are. And by playing to that fat part of the green, we're going to hit a lot more greens. It's going to give us loads of chances to have 2 putts, get down in par, get away to the next hole, and hopefully break 80 next time we go out on the golf course. So here I've gone up half a club because I definitely do not want to be short and go into that false front. And then I'm just going to move that pin to the left and give myself that nice wide flat part of the green to hit into. Now that's kind of a great example because I didn't hit it perfect. I caught it slightly heavy out of the rough, but because I'd picked a good line and I'd gone up some club, it still snuck onto the front of the green and given me a really good look at 2 putt for par. I think the vast majority of golfers would improve their scoring and shoot lower scores if they just manage their expectations better. I see so many golfers out on the golf course getting really frustrated and angry with themselves after they've hit what they perceive to be a bad shot is, but I don't think they really understand what a good shot is and what an average shot is and what is actually okay relative to their playing ability. I'm currently 120 yards out from the pin, which is about my pitching wedge distance, and what you might find extremely surprising is that scratch golfers only hit 58% of greens with their pitching wedge. From this distance, they're only getting their shots on the green just over half the time they attempt it, which is absolutely mind-boggling. Their average proximity from here is 58 feet, which is way bigger than the putting surface, which goes to show you why they're not hitting the green every time. And I think this is just a really interesting stat to make you realise that scratch golfers aren't perfect, and actually if you want to shoot a score that's under 80, you don't have to hit perfect shots every time to do so. As we move through the bag, this stat only gets worse. With a 7-iron, they're only hitting the green 46% of the time, and that's giving them a 68 feet dispersion. When we move to 5-iron, this drops to 31% of greens being hit. That means they're only hitting the green 1 out of every 3 times with their 5-iron. The dispersion is also huge here, 95 feet, which is nearly 30 yards. Now when we get near the top of the bag and we're looking at hitting into a green with a 3-wood, scratch golfers only hit the green 8% of the time when they're pulling this fairway wood out. The dispersion is also 158 feet with this club, so next time you hit a wide one with your 3-wood, really don't criticise yourself. Actually, maybe you should congratulate yourself if you're inside 150 feet because you're actually statistically better than a scratch golfer. Now this also applies to putting, and I think golfers think that people who break 80 regularly just hole loads of putts, but this isn't really the case at all. In fact, from 9 to 12 feet, scratch golfers only hole 34% of putts. That means if they had this putt 3 times, they would only be expected to hole it once. Go, 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 go. Didn't hit it. I guess the stats don't lie. When we move outside 30 feet, scratch golfers are only expected to hole this putt 4% of the time. That means if they stood here and hit 100 putts, they would only hole 4. That's why when it gets to this distance, we should be really focusing on just getting the ball near the hole and giving ourselves an easy 2-putt. But also it means when we're out on the greens, we shouldn't be really trying to force all our putts to go in and getting really angry and annoyed with ourselves when they don't, because when we look at the stats, the chances of missing are way bigger than holing for all handicap golfers. I see so many golfers ruin a good scorecard by getting really agitated and angry with themselves over sometimes one bad shot, and this anger can carry on through the round, affect their shots, the decisions they're making, and just drive their score up. So if you want to shoot lower scores, maybe adjust your expectation of what good and bad actually is. Give yourself a little bit of slack on the golf course, play with a little bit more freedom, and maybe you won't feel so tight and agitated, and it might reduce how many mistakes you're making. Another way I think we can really help our scoring and look to bring that score down into the 70s is by making better shot decisions around the greens. We know we're going to miss nearly 50% of greens out on the golf course, which means if we want to shoot good scores, we need to hit good chip shots and make good decisions around the greens. But I think because we've watched so much tour golf and seen those players take lob wedge out everywhere, we think that's what we have to do. But the reality is there's such a big gap between a tour pro and someone who is a scratch golfer or who wants to break 80. The skill level of a tour pro is off the charts, and actually to use a lob wedge really well around the green all the time, you have to be a really highly skilled golfer, because this club is going to show you up if you do anything even slightly wrong. So actually a lot of the time we should be trying to hit shots that are a lot more forgiving and allow us to get away with it if our strikes aren't quite perfect. I also think we need to be better at just thinking about getting our chip on the green nearish the pin and giving ourselves a putt, rather than thinking we have to pull out lob wedge because it's the only shot of us getting the ball really close. I also think knowing how close a scratch golfer chips it on average really helps with the shot making decision. So a scratch golfer on average has 11 feet left after they've hit a chip shot onto the green. Now it's quite easy to think, well, if I pull putter out here, I could definitely get my ball within 11 feet. Maybe I could go for a chip and run 7-iron. And it might be in some scenarios that actually pulling out lob wedge is the only way that you could get it to 1 or 2 feet, but you might also chunk one or thin one or not quite strike the other one, and they all end up 30 feet away. And actually if you just putted it or hit a low running shot, maybe it would only go to 8 foot on average, but that would be way better than hitting one shot to 3 foot and all the rest not being on the green or being really far away. So we've got to think about playing to the percentages, hitting a shot that's going to give us a good result 75% plus of the time, and not pulling the shot that's only going to let us hit a good shot maybe 1 or 2 times out of 10. Again, it's all about taking out that really bad shot, improving the amount of times we have that average shot, and a few extra good shots will just come off the back of that. A hybrid is actually a really good way to hit a low running shot when it's a bit wet or it's uphill and you're worried you're not going to get enough speed, because it just gives you a little bit more ball speed than a putter, but you don't have to control the strike in the same way that you do with like a wedge. A little bit pacey there, but definitely a really good shot if you just want to get the ball running, release and get it up to a pin. I didn't even play all of them particularly well, but they're definitely all inside that 11 feet mark. So practice some different chip shot varieties and don't think you have to hit it really close to break 80.